All right, so we are starting tonight lesson 10. Those seeking protection depend on prayer. We have, Jim has those if you need one of those for tonight. I also put lesson 11 back there. We might go through this lesson pretty quickly. So I went ahead and made sure we have for next week as well, which will be our last lesson. We might do a review or something like that at the end as well. But tonight, we're looking at those seeking protection depend on prayer. And I want to start in Jonah chapter 2. So go ahead and get your Bibles out, turn to Jonah chapter 2. And we'll look at Jonah's prayer. So we're going to see, as usual, quite a bit of overlap from some of the other classes we've done, right? We'll see some overlap where we're talking about the fearful and the oppressed. There are some verses we're going to look at today that are a little bit more specific about protection. But again, like all of these things really bleed into one another as we think about these things. So Jonah chapter 2. This is after Jonah has run away from God, right? So he tries to run away. God tells him to go where? Nineveh, okay? And to preach to Nineveh, right? He doesn't want to go, right? We find out, at least part of the reason he doesn't want to go is what? God is merciful. God is merciful, and he just knows that God will forgive him. Which is exactly what God does. And they are the enemies. Assyria is an enemy of Israel. And Assyria has done horrible things to people. Right? So he has reasons not to like them. But he runs. He's on the ship. Okay. They cast lots to figure out whose fault this is. The storm that they're in. It falls to Jonah. And they, Jonah tells them, throw me overboard. It is my fault. So they throw him overboard. As soon as he is in the water, the storm stops. And verse 17 of chapter 1, the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, so then we get to chapter 2, which is what we're about to go through. Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. Okay, so Jonah is where? Yes, in the stomach of a fish. He's been eaten by something else. Okay? And it's from there that what we're about to read is what he's praying. Which is an interesting, I don't know of anybody else that's prayed from this particular location before. Certainly none that are recorded. But he's been eaten. Right? Lest we think that something else has happened. He's been swallowed, yes. But he has been ingested, right? He has been taken into another animal as an animal would eat something, right? He hasn't been chewed, that's true. Yes, positives, right? Look on the bright side. But he is still alive in the belly of this fish, obviously, and this is what he's praying. Okay, so verse 2 starts the prayer. I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. So it starts with what? Jonah did what? He called out. He cried out. When? Yeah, when he was in distress. Specifically, when? In the water. Yeah, after he got in the belly. Well, it sounds like before he got in the belly. After he'd been thrown into the ocean or the sea. Right? In the sea, because he's going to talk more about that experience. Right? In the sea, thrown in the water, he cries out to God. Okay? God, save me. God, protect me. And how does he feel from the belly of the fish? He feels like, what has happened? I see he answered me. Right? I cried out. Jonah's in the water, in the sea, going to drown. Right? And this fish swallows him up, and he says, God, you answered me. Right? I asked for protection. I was going to drown. And now I'm not drowning. You protected me. You saved me from this. Okay? So again, I don't know if I would be thankful in the belly of a fish or the belly of anything. Right? But Jonah also knew the alternative, which was what? Drowning. Right? The alternative is drowning. And so here, at least he's alive, where the other is certain death. So he is, thanking God, essentially. He doesn't use those words, but he's recognizing that God has answered his prayer. God has answered his crying out. God saved me, and he says he has. Right? Out of the belly of Sheol, out of certain death, I cried, and you heard my voice. Verse 3, for you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas. The flood surrounded me, all your waves and your billows passed over me. Who cast him into the deep? Yeah, the people on the boat, right? In his prayer, though, he says who? God, you did it, right? God, you brought this about, right? Didn't God bring the storm about, right? Didn't God make the lot fall on Jonah, right? He recognized this is not it's not blaming, right? But it's kind of recognition of what? What's Jonah kind of acknowledging here? God's behind everything, and I deserve this, right? That's the other side of this that I see. You cast me into the deep because that's what I deserved. Because I was trying to run from you, and I was being disobedient. You punished me justly, right? Not you reached out and unfairly did this thing to me, but this is what I had coming. And so you brought this about, right? So flood surrounded me, your waves, your billows passed over me. Again, what was it like when Jonah went into the water? Yeah, it was a storm, right? It was a storm. It says, in verse 13 of chapter 1, that the men had rowed hard to get back to dry land. They couldn't. And the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. Like it just kept intensifying. And so that's the condition as Jonah gets thrown in. I remember going out to the beach to surf with Aaron and Bert and your boys. I think one time when there was a hurricane out there, and I can swim. I'm a good enough swimmer, but the water was so rough. Like to try and get out to the waves, you just kept getting just washed over. And I was like, I will drown if I keep trying. Like I gotta recognize my limits here and just get out, because I'm not going to make it. It's too much for me, right? So even if Jonah was a great swimmer, which we have no reason to believe he was, in the storm, there's no hope, right? You're not going to keep above it. The waves and the billows, right? Verse 4, then I said, I'm driven away from your sight. Yet I shall look upon your holy temple. Yet I shall again look upon your holy temple, right? So how did Jonah get away from God? What caused Jonah to get away from God? God or Jonah? Jonah, right? Jonah's the one who ran away. God said, do this thing. And Jonah said, no, I'm gonna run. Okay? But yet here he's saying, I'm driven away. Again, this punishment. You are casting me away. You've cast me away. You've thrown me into the deep. You've cast me away. And yet, again, here, I've been renewed. I have another chance. Okay? Verse 5, the waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head. Okay? Again, certainty of death. The water is taking me down. I've got seaweed all wrapped around me. It's almost this idea that it's like pulling him down. Right? That's the imagery here. All the water things were grabbing me and bringing me down. Verse 6, at the roots of the mountains. Right? So he's like, I was at the bottom of the sea. I was on the seabed. I mean, not literally, but that's how it felt. Right? I'm so far down that I can't even swim up. Even if things calmed, I'm too far down. I can't get out. And he says, I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever. Right? So Jonah feels like what? It's over. There's no rescue. The bars have closed on me. Right? I've been trapped in here. In the water. In this watery grave. This is it for me. Okay? And there's no rescue. There's no hope. Okay? That's what it feels like. The bars closed upon me forever, yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. Right? So in Jonah's mind, from the belly of the fish, he's been saved. He's been brought from death to life. Right? That's Jonah's perspective. Because he was dying. There was no hope of not dying, of not drowning. That was it. And yet here he's been rescued. His life has been brought up from the pit. Again, an interesting perspective from the belly of an animal. Okay. Verse 7, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord. My prayer came to you into your holy temple. He said, in the midst of this, right, as I recognized my life was going away from me, the hopelessness of my situation, right? Jonah did what? He prayed, right? I remembered the Lord and I prayed to him. I prayed to his temple. Verse 8, those who pray, who pay regard to vain idols, forsake their hope of steadfast love. He just throws that in there. Look, I know who I'm praying to, and there are others that are praying to idols. Well, guess what no idol has ever done? Saved anyone from drowning. Right? Jonah's like, you waste your hope. If you're going to put your hope in an idol, it's vain, and you're forsaking any real hope. Because this is what the real hope is. The God that can save, the God that can deliver. Right? No idol can do that. Verse 9, I with the voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Okay, so again, thanksgiving in the midst of this, right? In his current situation. Thanksgiving and really this forward-looking hope, right? I will fulfill the things, God, that I said I would do. Right? You're going to give me the opportunity. There's this certainty. Because otherwise you wouldn't have saved me. Right? Because salvation belongs to you. So the prayer is kind of it's after the fact. It's after God has rescued, after God has saved, after God has protected. But it really talks about Jonah's mindset and Jonah's just crying out to God. Again, we talked about this last week. Jonah is in a situation through his own sinful actions, right? Jonah is not, an innocent party here. He was sinful. He violated what God told him to do, and yet he still he cries out to God in his trouble, in his distress, and God still hears him, right? God is still willing to hear this repentant heart. Willing to hear this humbled heart and to rescue him. Okay, so that's Jonah too. We'll kind of do a little bit more application after the next one. Anybody have anything else on Jonah 2 before we move on? All right. Let's go to Psalm 61. So a short psalm, but again along the same kind of lines. All right, Psalm 61, starting in verse 1. Okay, kind of starts in a similar place. Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. God, listen to me, hear me. Verse 2, from the end of the earth I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Okay, so as we're thinking about protection, as we're thinking about God watching over us, looking out for us, right? He says, all right, I'm calling out from where? From the end of the earth. What does that mean? It's a good question, Jerry. What does that mean, from the end of the earth? It's called a redirect. Somebody asked a question, and you're like, yeah, let's ask everybody else. What do you mean, from the end of the earth?
Not literal. More like how it feels like he's as far as possible away from either God or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes along. Jonah was talking about being cast away, right? Being driven far from God. I think there's also this recognition that. Oh yeah, go ahead, John.
I think it's what it's about to say. There's nowhere on earth that God can't get to.
Yeah, wherever I am, right? However far it feels like I am, right? I can cry to God from there. So I think that's the recognition, and sometimes, right? I think about Elijah, right? Elijah, as he goes to Mount Horeb, I think, pretty sure it's Mount Horeb, but he, the angel gives him the food, and then he just runs for days and makes it all the way there, and then he's like, I'm the only one. God, there's no one else that's serving you. And I'm sure it felt like that to David at times too, right? Like, I'm all alone. I'm doing this on my own. The only one who loves you, the only one who cares about you. And so here I am just at the ends of the earth, by myself, trying to do this thing for you. And it's a term of desperation, right? The end of the earth. I can't go any farther. So, yeah, I think it's a feeling of desperation mixed with this recognition that even here I can call to you. Even at the end of the earth, you'll hear me. It doesn't matter the distance from your sanctuary or whatever, right? Wherever I am, I can call to you and you'll hear me. Particularly when my heart is faint, when I'm feeling beaten down, right? I know that I can call to you. I know you'll hear me. The rest of that verse, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Right? So what's that about? The rock that's higher than I. Say louder. Safety? Yeah, rock is definitely safety. Right? It's a sheltered place. Okay, if you were being attacked, you'd want to be on the other side of the rock, right? You'd want shelter and safety, right? And this idea, it's higher than I. It's more secure than what I could do for myself, right? It's more secure than what anybody else could provide, and it's based on better wisdom and understanding of the situation than what I have, right? So lead me to that. Take me to that place of safety. Take me to that place of comfort and protection. That's what I'm looking for, God. Put me there. Yeah, John.
Also stability?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely, stability, right? If you were going to build, think about rocks, and we don't have them in Florida very much, like this. Thinking about like a rocky hill or mountain, right? I read a book about this fortress that Herod had made. And after the fall of Jerusalem, it's like one of the last holdouts they have. But it's basically just this mountain in the middle of the desert, and there's a fortress on top. And it's difficult for anybody to get up to it, but the Romans are trying to get them. But it's like, okay, well, if I can establish up here, then I'm going to be safe, right? That's not going to move. That's not going to shake. It's going to be difficult for you to harm me when I'm in this sheltered position, right? Edom's downfall, Edom's brag, they were on the cliffs, like no one can get to us, right? We're protected, we're safe. We have the rock between us. And so here, I'm the rock of God, right? That security and stability, I think, absolutely. Verse 3, kind of continuing with that. You have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. And in the past, I've turned to you, right? And you have protected me. I have in mind a particular instance, rock-related instance with David, where the rock protected him. If anybody can read my mind and think of the thing I'm thinking about. That's a good one. That's not the one I was thinking about. There's a time when Saul's after him, and Saul and his men and David and his men are on opposite sides of a rock, and they kind of do this thing, and David gets away. But it's just by being on the other side of the rock, he was protected. He was safe. There you go. Okay. All right. So again, looking whether he's thinking about that particular instance or whatever, right? You have been my refuge. You've been a tower against the enemy, right? That's the ultimate stronghold in in this warfare in this time would be the tower, right? You get the people in the tower, you can't get up it, you can't get to it, right? You're safe up there. You can hurl millstones down at people, right? Like happened to Abimelech. You're protected. And so that's the image for God here. You're a strong tower against the enemy. Verse 4, let me dwell in your tent forever. Right? Let me be the one that you take care of. I want to be the one living in your tent that you're watching over, that you're protecting. Similar imagery. Let me take refuge under the shelter of your wings. You think about, mama birds lifting their wings and hiding and shading and covering their babies, right? Protecting them from the predator birds. Okay, so let me do that. Protect me like that, right? Which is both of those images are all about trust, right? Like, well, I'm not going to go out and fight. So rock, tower, those are military kind of combative situations. But thinking about, dwelling in your tent and refuge under the shelter of your wings is like I'm going to lay my sword down and I'm just going to come to you. Those are soft. Those are soft things. Rock and tower, that's hard, right? But these are soft things. Protection, the soft protection of a tent or of a mother bird's body, right? Wings. It is, kind of in every way, God, you're my protector. So if you want me to fight for you, I'll fight, and I know that you'll protect me. But if you want me to just lay down my arms and just turn to you and trust you and let you do what you want to do, then I'll do that, right? Like whatever you want, I want you to protect me. I want you to watch over me, right? Verse 5, for you, O God, have heard my vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. Prolong the life of the king. May his years endure to all generations. So God, preserve my life, right? Protect me. Help me to rule your people well. May he be enthroned forever before God. Appoint steadfast love and faithfulness to watch over him. Right? Protect me, watch over me with your steadfast love and faithfulness. Verse 8, so will I ever sing praises to your name as I perform my vows day after day. Okay? So, similarities on these, right? Both of these, Jonah, David here, it's turning to God for rescue, right? There and protection. There are times when people turn other places, right? Both of these examples, they want protection, they want rescue from God. One of the other things we were just talking about, this idea of never being too far from God, right? Jonah in the midst of the water, right? Feeling cast out, still not too far to cry out to God or for God to rescue. David, from the ends of the earth, I'm still going to cry out to you. Yeah.
Do we know that this was written after he became king? Because it would make sense if he's concerned about his refuge, that it would have been he's praying for Saul at this point.
Yeah. We do not know. I do not know. I guess I can't speak for all of us. But I do not know if it was written before or after he became king. I guess my inclination, because he talks about being enthroned forever before God, sounds to me like the promise that God had made to him. So that would be my guess, but it's not a very educated one. So never too far from God, right? Also the fact that whatever the situation is, it's never too bad, right? The situation's never too dire for God to save, to reach out to God, to not just ask for God's protection, but even expect that God would protect his faithful ones. Even in Jonah's sense, in Jonah's situation, where it was a consequence of the sin. It's still, it wasn't like a last ditch effort. It was just, here I am in the water. I'm going to pray to God. I know that God can save me. I know that God can protect me. There's another thing in here that's in both of these that I thought was kind of interesting. You can see it here if you've still got Psalm 61 in verse 8. This particular thing that we find in both of these. Vows, the paying of vows, right? Jonah says the same thing. I will pay what I have vowed. And here David says, I'm going to perform my vows day after day. Right? So I think there's also, what does that make you think about? Talking about paying your vows. Keeping promises, for sure. Okay? Definitely keeping promises. What else? What form would vow keeping take? What does vow, what does paying my vows look like? What would it have looked like for Jonah and for David? An agreement, for sure. How's it usually, when it comes to the payment of vows, what form would that have usually taken? Sacrifice, right? It would have most likely been something sacrificed, right? Animals or fruits or whatever, right? It would have been something vowed and sacrificed to God, right? And so I think this kind of carries this idea of God, the protector God, being worthy of service and devotion, right? That you're going to give me the opportunity now, because I think that's what we really saw with Jonah. You're giving me the opportunity to pay my vows, right? You're going to allow me to to do what I promised, to serve you, to devote myself to you. So I think there's some recognition in this too, that God is worthy of that, and by God protecting us, saving our lives, we then have that opportunity to serve. So I thought that was kind of an interesting connection between these two. Anything else between these two that kind of jump out at you that you wanted to mention? All right. Let's go to Acts chapter 12. So we've looked at some of this before. So again, we've looked at this in this class before. God's protection of Peter, right, through prayer. So we're not going to read all of this, but again, just to kind of set the stage, Herod has imprisoned James and killed James, and he sees that it pleased the Jews when he did that. So the next thing he does is he goes and arrests Peter. Obviously, the implication is Peter is also going to be killed. Okay, so as that happens, right, he is, I'll go to verse 5, chapter 12. Peter's kept in prison. Earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. So just to go back to verse 4, right, he was in prison, delivered over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people, again, as execution, right? Bring him out to the people to execute him. So he's in prison. We're going to read in verse 6 kind of what that looks like. But he's being guarded not just by a soldier or by 4 soldiers, right? But by 4 squads of soldiers. So Herod has, packed the prison with people to make sure to watch over Peter. You don't want anybody trying to get Peter out. Okay? So verse 6, he's sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains. Sentries before the door were guarding the prison. So he's in his cell, and he's got a soldier on either side of him, and he's chained to those soldiers twice. And right outside the cell, there's men guarding, and more men throughout the prison. Okay, so pretty secure to, for Peter here. But of course, the angel comes, knocks the chains, the chains fall off his hands. He opens up all the doors. I'm sorry, he doesn't open up all the doors. All the doors open just for him, like walking into a grocery store. Okay, the prison doors, the gates of the city, all those things. Okay. After this happens, he realizes he thinks he's dreaming, but he realizes that all this actually happened. And verse 12, he goes to the house of Mary, mother of John, whose other name is Mark, where many were gathered together and were praying for Peter's release. He knocks at the door. Rhoda comes to answer. Verse 14, recognizing Peter's voice in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. So she doesn't bring him in. She just runs inside, and it's like, Peter's here, right? And then everybody says what? You're crazy, girl. Peter is definitely not here. That's his angel, whatever that means. It's not Peter. It might be an angel, but it's for sure not Peter. I can tell you who it's not, and it's not Peter. You can name anybody else, including angels, and I would believe you. But if you tell me it's Peter at the door, that is definitely not happening. Right? There's definitely not Peter at the door. Verse 16, but Peter continued knocking. And when they opened, they saw him and were amazed. Right? So Peter just keeps knocking. And so finally somebody opens the door and is like, well, we'll see who it really is. And it's Peter. And of course, how did they respond? They were amazed. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that Peter was there. Okay, so then he tells them everything that happened, what to do, and then he runs off. Okay, he departed. I love it. Luke, he departed. Where'd he go? Where's Luke say he went? No. Well, where'd he start to go? Verse 17. Another place. He went somewhere else. Herod. He's not here. I'm not going to tell you where he is. He went somewhere else. Don't you worry about where he went. Okay? And at some point, I think it's Herod that goes to Caesarea. He eventually has to kill the guards because he don't want anybody knowing about what happened. Right? So he has to kill 4 squads of guards because of this. Okay, so the question is, right, how far did God go to protect Peter?
He killed Herod.
Yeah, eventually he killed Herod, for sure. He sent an angel. He caused all the doors to open and the chains to fall off, and no soldier to interfere at all with anything that was happening, right? And brought him to where he wanted him to go, right? Like, God pretty much did everything to protect Peter. Okay, Peter didn't really have to do anything except for get up and, get dressed, right? And he had to get kicked in the side to do that. So, really, Peter doesn't do anything. No one else does anything. God does the whole thing, right? God does absolutely everything to protect Peter, okay? And brings him to the very people who are praying for him, okay? So the next question is, do we ever pray for God's intervention and find ourselves surprised when he answers? I think if we're honest, sometimes we do, right? Just like they were. You'd think that they'd have been like, he's here. God did it. God did the thing we were asking. But instead they're like, no, it can't be. That's not possible. Right? They couldn't believe it. And then even when he comes in, they're amazed that God would do this. God could do this. Whatever it was, right? They're amazed. They can't believe it. Right? It's old. It's an old story, but and I don't even know how true it is, but I'm going to say it like it's true. I remember hearing about some congregation that had prayed for some evil business in town to be shut down. I don't remember what it was, if it was, like a strip club or a bar or something. But they were praying for it to go away. They had determined it had opened up. They were all upset about it. They were like, we're going to pray. I think they had like special, services to pray about it. And then it burned down or something happened. It was public knowledge that they were praying about this place, but it went away, and they got sued. Right? They got sued about it, and we're like, well, the way the story was relayed to me, like, we didn't think it would work, right? It's almost that kind of response, like, you can't put that on us, instead of being like, well, yeah, that's exactly what God can do, right? Like, what a badge of honor it would be to be sued by the world because we had prayed and God delivered, right? Like, I feel like we wouldn't back down. Like, we're just all on the stand. Every one of us prayed about that, right? I'd love that. But sometimes we ask God to do something to protect us, to heal somebody, to have a good result on something, right? And God does that, and we're like, oh, I didn't think that would happen. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Lack of faith.
Ultimately, yeah. It's got to be to some extent, right? It's got to be some deficiency in faith, right? even though we're asking for it. I think it's interesting, not the ones we read this week, but when we looked back at Jehoshaphat, right, and God said, hey, you're not going to have to fight this battle, and you're just going to go and see what I've done. No one is amazed, right? They sing, they go, and then God has just done it, and they're like, yep, this is what God does, right? They weren't like, I can't believe it, because God had said that's what he was going to do. So it's nice when God says, hey, I'm going to do this exact thing, right? But it happens in different ways sometimes, right? I remember talking about years ago when Joe was first here, how we had done the budget and we were only going to be able to afford him for, I think we had 2 years, and then it was like 8 years later, and someone wanted to buy this land, and these other things just happened, right? And God just kind of took care of it. And then here we were, just trusting, and God provided. Like when brethren get together to help someone else out, or when someone has need, and someone else is like, hey, I'm going to provide for that need, right? Like, we shouldn't be amazed at that. That shouldn't shock us or surprise us or be something that we can't believe, right? Because we trust God, and we trust that God will do the things he says he'll do, right? Go back to Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. What did Jesus tell us, essentially, about the physical things? Don't worry about them. You just don't even need to worry about them. They don't need to take up space in your brain for worry, right? Do the things I said to do, and the rest of the stuff I'll take care of, right? Look at the birds, look at the lilies, right? They're provided for, right? They're not working hard. They're not fretting about these things. I just am providing for them. And won't I do the same for you, right? Those who I love. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the simplest and broadest answer, right, is a deficiency of faith. We don't trust God like we should when we find ourselves in those situations. Which is why I think reading some of these accounts is so helpful, to say, oh, well, I doubt anyone has had an instance where 185,000 Assyrians were killed in the night by an angel, right? Like, I don't think any of us have gotten that far, and we know God can do that, right? So anything up to that point is fair game, right? I know if that's a limit, then yeah, God making someone that might have been sicker less sick, like, yeah, definitely he can do that. All right, I want to kind of pick up with that idea and that question next week, and then we'll touch on the other three. These next three questions are going to be a bit more kind of back and forth discussion, so it'd be good if you thought about them and had some things written down.